Well, welcome back to Whole Bible Study with your host, me, Tad Inouye. Well, so far in the book of Leviticus, we have seen the detailed instructions given to Moses on Mount Sinai regarding offerings and sacrifices. The first 7 chapters of Leviticus carefully laid out the different types of offerings: burnt offerings, grain offerings, peace offerings, sin offerings, and guilt offerings. Each has its own ritual, symbolism, and place within the life of Israel. Then in chapter 8, we watch as Aaron and his sons were consecrated and ordained as priests. Moses performed the rituals of washing, clothing, anointing, and sacrifice to establish them as mediators between God and Israel. All of this has been leading up to this point. The priests are now ready to perform their first official service before the people. Leviticus 9 is the chapter where ritual instruction becomes living practice. It is the pivot where ceremony transitions from preparation into sacred action. The priests step forward, the community gathers, and we see whether God's presence will meet them in this new order of worship. So now let's do the live reading for Leviticus chapter 8. All right. Leviticus chapter 9. On the 8th day, Moses summoned Aaron and his sons and the elders of Israel. He said to Aaron, take a bull calf for your sin offering and a ram for your burnt offering, both without defect, and present them before the Lord. Then say to the Israelites, take a male goat for the sin offering, a calf and a lamb, both a year old and without defect, for a burnt offering, and an ox and a ram for the fellowship offering, so to sacrifice before the Lord, together with a grain offering mixed with oil, for today the Lord will appear to you. They took the things Moses commanded to the front of the tent of meeting, and the entire assembly came near and stood before the Lord. Then Moses said, this is what the Lord has commanded. This is what the Lord has commanded you to do, so that the glory of the Lord may appear to you. Moses said to Aaron, come to the altar and sacrifice your sin offering and your burnt offering, and make atonement for yourself and the people. Sacrifice the offering that is for the people, and make atonement for them, as the Lord has commanded. So Aaron came to the altar and slaughtered the calf as a sin offering for himself. His sons brought the blood to him, and he dipped his finger into the blood and put it on the horns of the altar. The rest of the blood he poured out at the base of the altar. On the altar he burned the fat, the kidneys, and the covering of the liver from the sin offering, as the Lord commanded Moses. The flesh and the hide he burnt up outside the camp. Then he slaughtered the burnt offering. His sons handed him the blood, and he sprinkled it against the altar on the sides. They handed him the burnt offering, piece by piece, including the bread, and he burned them on the altar. He washed the inner parts and the inner parts and the legs, and burned them on top of the burnt offering on the altar. Aaron then brought the offering that was for the people. He took the goat for the people's sin offering and slaughtered it and offered it for a sin offering, as he did with the first one. He brought the burnt offering and offered it in the prescribed way. He also brought the grain offering, took a handful of it, and burned it on the altar in addition to the morning's burnt offering. He slaughtered the ox and the ram as the fellowship offering for the people. His sons handed him the blood, and he sprinkled it against the altar on all sides. But the fat portions of the ox and the ram, the fat tail, the layer of fat, the kidneys, and the covering of the liver, these they laid on the breasts, and then Aaron burned the fat on the altar. Aaron waved the breasts and the right thigh before the Lord as the wave offering, as Moses commanded. Then Aaron lifted his hands toward the people and blessed them. And having sacrificed the sin offering, the burnt offering, and the fellowship offering, he stepped down. Moses and Aaron then went into the tent of meeting. When they came out, they blessed the people And the glory of the Lord appeared to all the people. Fire came out from the presence of the Lord and consumed the burnt offering and the fat portions on the altar. And when all the people saw it, they shouted for joy and fell face down. All right. Now Leviticus 9 opens with a deliberate note for anticipation. On the 8th day, in the biblical imagination, numbers often carry more than mathematical meaning. They signal patterns, symbols, even theology. 7 marks completion. Just as God completed the work of creation in 7 days, the 8th day is something more. It signals a new creation, a step beyond ordinary time into a space where something fresh is being born. By beginning the priestly ministry on the 8th day, the text tells us that this is no ordinary sequence of ritual. It is a new creation moment, the inauguration of Israel's worship life. Aaron is called to bring a very specific offerings, a calf for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering, both without blemish. The people too are instructed to bring a goat for a sin offering, a calf and a lamb for burnt offerings, an ox and a ram for peace offerings, and finally a grain offering mixed with oil. These instructions may sound repetitive to us because we've already read them in earlier chapters. But here the repetition matters. It is one thing to learn ritual in theory, it is another to see it enacted in practice. The variety of offerings highlights the wholeness of Israel's life before God. Sins confessed, gratitude expressed, peace pursued, daily bread offered, back to the thanksgiving. It is important to note that Aaron begins with sacrifices for himself. Before he can intercede for the people, he must acknowledge his own need for forgiveness and reconciliation. The detail underscores a theological principle that reverberates throughout the Bible. Leaders, no matter how elevated their role, are not exempt from the need for grace. Jacob Milgrom, in his monumental commentary on Leviticus, emphasizes that this sequence protects against the notion of flawless priesthood. Priests are mediators, not perfect beings. Their own weakness is confronted before they take up the sacred task of mediating on behalf of others. The Hebrew words used here are not dry technicalities. They give us windows into the meaning of what is happening. The word kippur, atonement, means to cover or to purge. When Aaron makes atonement, he is not magically erasing sin. He is covering over that which would otherwise block relationship with God. The burnt offering, olah, literally to ascend, is described in terms of smoke rising upward, carrying the offering symbolically to the heavenly dwelling of God. The peace offering, zavah shalaman, grows from the root shalom, a word much deeper than simply peace. In the modern sense, it conveys wholeness, harmony, and right relationship. Through these sacrifices, Israel is not simply meeting legal obligations. They are participating in a liturgy of reconciliation where sin is acknowledged, forgiveness is enacted, and a blessing restored. The order of the ritual carries weight. First, the priest, then the people. This is not accidental. It illustrates the principle that those who mediate must themselves be reconciled before acting for others. Now, John Dominic Crossan, reflecting on priestly systems in the ancient world, notes that in many cultures, mediators had to undergo ritual purification before daring to represent others before the divine. Israel shares this broader cultural logic, but frames it uniquely in relation to Yahweh, holiness and covenant. What makes Israel's priesthood distinct is not merely its form, but its grounding in God's covenantal character. The narrative reaches its climax when Aaron blesses the people, and then, joined by Moses, enters the tent of meeting. When they emerge, They bless the people again. And then it happens. The glory of Yahweh appears to the whole assembly, and fire comes forth from before the Lord, consuming the offering on the altar. This is the moment of divine response. The people fall on their faces, overcome with awe and fear. The ritual has not simply been performed correctly, it has been received. Heaven has answered earth. Scholars have long debated how to interpret this fire. Some, such as Marcus Borg, suggest that the text uses dramatic, symbolic imagery to make visible the invisible, to impress upon the community the reality of God's presence in a way that engages sight, sound, and imagination. Others, especially within traditional Jewish and Christian interpretations, see the fire as literal, a genuine material theophany, in which God's glory manifests in consuming flame. Whether symbolic or literal, the point remains. Worship in Israel is never one-sided performance. It is covenantal dialogue. God himself participates, confirming his presence and sense acceptance of the offerings. This moment also carries political and social dimensions. Priestly service was not only spiritual, it shaped the structure of Israel's communal life. By centralizing ritual authority in the descendants of Aaron, the text reinforces a vision of ordered worship, hierarchy, and continuity. Many scholars attribute this emphasis to what is often called the priestly source, a strand of biblical tradition that crystallized during or after the exile. In times of instability, precision, order, and sacred authority provided the community with identity and resilience. So as Elaine Pagels has pointed out in her studies of religious systems, rituals are not only about connecting with God, they also organize and stabilize communities. Leviticus demonstrates this beautifully. Sacrifice is both worship and governance, both devotion and social structure. Another layer of significance comes through the blessing itself. Twice in this chapter, Aaron blesses the people, once before entering the tent and once after. Blessing is not a small detail. In Hebrew thought, the barakah is a powerful act that extends life, abundance, and divine favor. Sacrifice atones, but blessing transforms. Sacrifice clears away sin, but blessing fills the community with grace. After Jewish tradition connects this moment with the priestly blessing in Numbers 6:24 through 26, quote, "The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you," unquote. Whether this connection was present in the earliest context or not, the pattern is unmistakable. Priestly service is not only about forgiveness, but about the outpouring of life. From a literary standpoint, chapter 9 functions as a hinge. What has come before is all preparation, law, instruction, ritual detail. What comes next is tragedy, beginning in chapter 10, with Nadab and Abihu offering unauthorized fire and dying before the Lord. Thus, Leviticus 9 stands as the moment of ideal fulfillment. Everything works. The priests obey, the people participate, God responds in glory. George Nicholsburg, in his studies of Second Temple Judaism, observed how biblical texts often create an ideal scene only to contrast it with human failure, underscoring the fragile nature of holiness. Here, too, the pattern holds. Leviticus 9 is the high point, the vision of how it is supposed to be, and that vision throws the failures that follow into sharp relief. The people's reaction at the end of the chapter captures the paradox of holiness. They rejoice, but they also tremble. The fire signifies both acceptance and danger. Holiness is not tame. It can bring life, but it can also consume. The awe that drives the people to fall on their faces is more than joy. It is reverence, fear, and the recognition that God is not an idea to be studied at a distance, but a presence that demands response. Holiness is not safe, but it is good. It is not abstract, but embodied, dangerous, and life-giving. This chapter then speaks across time and tradition. In Christian interpretation, the letter to the Hebrews reads Levitical sacrifices as shadows of the greater reality fulfilled in Christ, who acts as the true high priest, offering himself once for all. In Jewish practice, the priestly blessing continues to this day, with descendants of Aaron raising their hands to bless the congregation. Across centuries, the themes remain meditation, holiness, blessing, presence. Humanity longs for reconciliation and for assurance that God is with us. Leviticus 9 gives us a picture of that longing answered, if only for a moment, in fire and glory. As we reflect on this passage, it challenges us not only to study, but to consider. What does it mean that leaders must be reconciled before they can serve others? How do rituals shape not only individuals, but communities? What does it mean for us to live as people who seek both atonement and blessing? And how do we balance the joy of God's nearness with the trembling recognition of his holiness? Leviticus 9 invites us to see holiness not as a concept, but as a lived reality. In this chapter, sacrifice leads to blessing, and blessing opens the door to awe. God responds when people prepare, when leaders humble themselves, when worship is offered with integrity. This isn't just ancient history, it's a pattern, a rhythm of life that still speaks today. So as we leave this chapter, may you walk with eyes open to the sacred woven into daily life. May you carry a spirit ready for God's nearness, and may peace and wholeness accompany you wherever you go. And I will see you in the next chapter soon, tomorrow.